Before we get to your scheduled video, please remember that likes and comments tell YouTube to promote our work to other people, and subscribing to the channel tells you when something new drops. You can also head to the link tree in the description to peruse my books, join us on Discord, or support us on Patreon. You can get episodes of Journey of Wrestling and Violent Profiles early, as well as a load of other treats. Even just $1 a month earns you a name drop for being cool. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show. Greetings and salutations, my fellow Italian-American, poverty-stricken, overweight people. It is I, Eric J. Chucky, joined as always by the boy.
Hey!
This is the Two Nerds Podcast, and today we're talking about the Super Mario Brothers movie. Before that, I would like to talk about some cool people, in addition to the titular Mario Brothers, who are very cool.
Of course.
Yes. That would be a guy from Ohio, Passion Killer 711, and Rob, if you can believe that.
Oh. So, Mario good.
Yeah, I mean, I have some criticisms, critiques, but by and large, this was a really good movie. I feel like this is going to be a year of good movies. It wasn't anything complex, and I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say we're doing the spoiler-free review right now, although I don't know what there is to spoil.
Like, this movie's not a complex movie. There's not like a wacky twist.
It's less complex than the D&D movie.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. But you don't gotta be complex to be good. This movie is simple, it is straightforward, and it is a barrel of fun.
All right, well, in the words of Yakko Warner, good night, everybody! It's difficult to talk about. So, we make this joke every now and then. If you guys are longtime listeners, you know this. We don't want a Guardians of the Galaxy a movie. Which is to say our Guardians of the Galaxy podcast, which I can't really recommend listening to.
On account of it's bad. It's mostly just us badly quoting the movie because we had just watched it and we're super hyped about how good it was.
Yeah. So, like, much like last week's Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves podcast, it's a little hard to scrounge up relevant things to talk about in praise of the movie. It has a lot of really great references. The characterization is pretty good. Like, the things you would expect of a good movie. Pretty, sound good.
It's nice, it's heartfelt.
Sure.
The characters aren't terribly complex, but they are very genuine. And Jack Black is having himself just the most fun possible.
And I would say in that the characters aren't too complex and are genuine is respectful of the source material. It doesn't add new wrinkles to characters that
do not
already
need
exist.
And did not want them.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to add anything to Mario and Luigi. You don't. They're fine. They're fine as is. Just make the movie about Mario and Luigi. And Illumination did that. They just made the movie.
I do appreciate that they highlighted Mario's trait of trying to be a good guy and never giving up. There's never a point in this movie where Mario is like trying to take advantage of somebody or doing something for inherently selfish reasons, unless you get into that Phoebe level of every act is a selfish act nonsense.
But yeah, he's just a good dude. He's just trying to help. And trying to, you know, he's just trying to help. And that's actually kind of rare in protagonists for this sort of comedy. Because normally you want them to have some sort of personality flaw that they then overcome. Instead, they go a different way with it. He does have some flaws that he overcomes, but they're largely skill-based.
Well, and I would say that Luigi has the personality flaw he needs to overcome in the sense of this story does have that narrative.
Yeah.
Just not with your main protagonist.
Yeah, and that's also absolutely fair. But again, that's just kind of Luigi's deal. Like, ever since they decided that he should have a character that wasn't just Green Mario, the character flaw he has in this movie is kind of the character flaw he's had.
I was trying to think of something controversial to say, but not too controversial, And
And
I
you only
got-
went
yeah,
you only
yeah.
went way over the line.
It was going to be a joke anyway. He's a scaredy man. He's nervous.
He's got anxiety.
But Luigi is also like a good guy too, and he loves his brother. So what I did in preparation for this podcast, because we don't have a lot to talk about, and unfortunately a lot of what we're talking about is going to be critical, because we can talk about that.
It is one of those things where the movie is good in such a firm, like fundamental way that it actually is kind of hard to praise.
You have to define it by its negative space, because what is positive is so positive that it's not really worth talking about at length.
You can say, you can give a quality of the movie. Like, it's got a really solid, what's the term? Hero's journey narrative. But that's not anything that's really worth breaking down.
No, yeah, it's tropey, and that's fine. It's not trying to be anything highbrow. This is a very safe movie. I can completely understand why, given how the people in charge of Nintendo are largely the same as they were in the 90s.
And, I mean, it worked out for them, because it's making approximately all the money.
Yeah, and I'm glad for that. I hope we get a sequel. I will say that I thought this movie could have been better, but I mean that as in like it's an A+ and could have been an S.
Yeah.
So
I don't really have those same criticisms you do. The things that you would rather have, would have been nice, but I'm perfectly fine without.
Well, and as I was saying, because of this, I went around the internet and I watched and read a couple of reviews, maybe about 5, of this film, to see what other people thought about it. Noteworthy is I could only find one review that looked like it was going to be negative, that was a video review, but it was from a content creator I don't watch anymore, because I don't have to. And I didn't want to watch it. So that alone is saying something, and his thumbnail may have been misleading. So
It is kind of that guy's shtick.
It is. So I went into text reviews, and the text reviews that I could find that were negative, I'm not sure they watched the movie.
Yeah, because you can easily find negative text reviews. This movie has a terrible score on Rotten Tomatoes in terms of critical reviews.
And I mean, the things that they were saying were basically, I can't believe this movie wasn't written and directed by Martin Scorsese. Also, Chris Pratt is in it. Which, let's start there, because that was the big thing everyone was afraid of, and you guys can go back and listen to previous podcasts where we talked about this. I've never been worried about it. I'm not a huge Chris Pratt fan or anything. He's fine. But
I found it really funny when I found "It's a me, Mario, that's not the voice," and then he was mostly doing a normal accent in the first trailer. I found that really funny, but I was never actually worried.
No, he did a fine performance. He did a little bit of a voice. There was not a point while watching that movie where I was like, this is Chris Pratt. And I felt that way about literally every other voice actor, except for, I guess, Anya Taylor-Joy, because I don't really...
Even Key?
Yes?
Really? I could not hear him in Toad.
Okay. I could.
Interesting.
That is interesting. I have no rejoinder other than I did. I think he's got a very unique voice and a very unique way of presenting things. And I thought his take on Toad was very Toad. I appreciate that they pitch shifted him to be higher.
Yeah.
The same way they downshifted
Bowser.
Jack Black, to be Bowser. I heard a criticism that they maybe should have done the same thing to Donkey Kong a little bit, because he and Mario ended up sounding kind of similar.
No, I don't necessarily agree. I like him as like a normal guy.
I could take it either way. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I don't disagree with it either. I will say that I really enjoyed Seth Rogen's performance. I really enjoyed this interpretation of Donkey Kong. I like that he was petty, and just, I don't know, like a competitive douche, but not in a villainous way.
No, he was like... He was the, he was a jock.
What a great way to put that. Yes, he was a cocky jock.
Not like a bad person, just someone who's always kind of been physically blessed and is fairly competitive. That breeds a certain kind of person.
Yeah. Chris Pratt he wasn't like phenomenal or anything, but he was fine.
He was doing his job.
Yeah, he did the job he was hired to do, and he did it just fine.
Yeah.
The rest of the cast did fun. I kind of wanted to save this for later when we were doing personal critiques, but I like Fred Armisen. This is the smallest, pettiest thing for me.
You wanted him to be more like the Donkey Kong, the terrible Donkey Kong series?
Well, so we discussed this away from things because we usually do after the movie to get that Guardians of the Galaxy
quote the movie at each other
out of our systems. Yeah. But I did mention that ironically, when the Donkey Kong cartoon came out, even though it is terrible, that voice they used is what I always imagined Cranky Kong sounded like. So, Fred Armisen is doing a Fred Armisen character here.
And he's doing a fine job.
And it's fine, but it's not...
I also wanted a little more gruff in Cranky Kong, but I'm not mad about it.
No, and I feel like they took it a direction, and I like the portrayal they went with. It was just kind of like, why is that voice coming out of Cranky Kong? I guess not quite as bad as Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, but still a little along that level. I could at least understand him. I do like the way they portrayed Cranky Kong. I like the Yoda-like aspects they gave to him, where he's just kind of messing with you, and I like that the Kongs had a culture of kart racing.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, what an interesting way to introduce that whole concept.
And that's actually a good way to bridge into. I love that they just listened. They just paid attention to the assignment. They were told to make a movie about all the Mario stuff, so they did. They found a way to work in Mario and Luigi and all of the, various side characters, and Yoshi was in there, at least in the background, or at least some Yoshis. And Donkey Kong was there, and there was a kart race, and Rainbow Road shows up, and
another good thing, I don't even know if this is a criticism I've heard, it is an assessment. This movie doesn't slow down.
No, it's pretty much like the Mario Kart has no brakes.
And I think that's fun in a lot of ways, especially in that nobody really questions anything too far. Like, when Mario is adapting to the Mushroom Kingdom, he's like, why are those blocks just floating? But that's the beginning and end of that. No one ever explains it.
These blocks just float here, okay.
Mario runs into Toad, and he's like, I can't find my brother. And Toad's like, I will help you with this, because that's rough. No question. No, how do we know we can trust you? He's just like, all right, yeah, that sounds like a problem. Let's go. And that's nice.
Yeah.
For leaning as heavily on tropes as this movie does, that was one thing that they didn't land on, and I'm okay with that.
Same.
Now,
I don't think the movie had time for it, to be honest.
Which is the critique I can offer. I think the movie was great as it was. What kept it from being, like, literally one of my top favorite movies of all time is that it never really breathed. And that is a criticism I have heard from these other reviewers I looked into. That it, because of the breakneck speed of the plot, because they were trying to be so safe, for whatever reason, I don't want to lay blame on anyone in particular. There's a lot of moving parts in making this movie, like behind the scenes in terms of management and stuff. There are points where, like, things are brought up, but they never really, I don't want to say pay off, but they just don't breathe. They don't have time to, like, sit and live in an emotional space between the characters. A scene that is a really easy version of this is Mario and Peach and Toad are starting their adventure. They're on a hill full of fire flowers. They have a little bit of a personal interaction. Mario wonders if Peach is possibly from his universe originally, because she is a human and there's no other humans here. And she just kind of goes, yeah, maybe. And that's the end of the scene. And, like, there could have been a couple more sentences there to hint at, like, an emotional investment from either character in whatever that means. I'm not saying make them kiss. Just even as friends, them trying to explore that space. You get that with Mario and Luigi. You get some of that with their family in Brooklyn in the opening.
You get a little bit of Mario and Donkey Kong.
A little bit. I think they could have taken it a little farther. I like what we got. I would have loved some more.
Whereas I don't necessarily know that I needed that from this movie.
I don't know that I needed it either. It's like seeing... Maybe you personally can't relate to this. Maybe our listeners can a little bit better. Listener, sorry, I didn't mean to pluralize you, Ultimo Dragon. If you had a really good slice of chocolate cake, big, thick, gooey, moist, and you finish it and you're like, oh, you know what would have made this whole experience better? Glass of milk. That's kind of how I felt this movie was. What a great piece of chocolate cake.
You were missing the milk?
But if I had that glass of milk, this may have been one of the best desserts I've ever eaten.
I find it so interesting that your, if not your impression of this movie, how you speak about this movie is so focused on that what could have been. You yearn for it so strongly.
Well, I don't mean to show everyone how the sausage is made here, but we do like to fill 30 minutes on this podcast, and we're at 15:40.
I mean, like this and other conversations we had about it. You bring it up consistently. What causes the yearning? I guess is what I'm asking.
I guess, like, what... And this is highly personal. Not that the show isn't, but what I like about movies... let's take another example, okay? Of a children's movie with a tropey script that I love. And that is the original Ninja Turtles movie.
Yeah, I knew that's where this was going.
I rewatch it every year. Or I have, at least for the last few. It is those earnest moments, those moments where the characters have a moment, a few seconds, a few sentences, a sting of music to bond and strengthen those bonds. And you see, not necessarily the humanity, but the realism, the earnestness, the genuineness. Not just in their over-the-top actions to save the day and do the right thing, but also in those little tiny moments.
The personal moments, where you get a peek into the heart of the movie.
Donatello and Michelangelo waiting for the pizza guy, and the conversation they have until the pizza guy shows up. Leonardo getting overjoyed that Raphael wakes back up in that bathtub. And the reaction of everybody else as they come in, which they finish with a nice tie-on, it's a Kodak moment joke. Donatello and Casey Jones trading insults at each other in alphabetical order while they fix a truck together.
I understand. I definitely get what you wanted there to be that was not it. That just fully was not in this movie.
And I would accept this as a difference in time. Kids today are different from kids when I was at it.
We were lucky there wasn't a small, roughly like eighth of the screen dedicated to Temple Run the whole time.
And that's another criticism I've heard laid. I, again, am neutral about it, much like Donkey Kong's non-pitch shifted voice. There were a couple of jukebox tracks in the film. I think about 5.
People don't like that?
Not like, this ruined the movie for me, but I could have done without it.
Really? I loved it.
I wasn't... The first one had me worried. Not because of what the song was. I want to say it was No Sleep Till Brooklyn.
Yeah.
That was fine. But it gave me a bit of the anxiety of, oh no, here comes Party Rock. Which I love that song, but not here, please, not here. Please, God, just do da-da-da-da-da-da and move on with our lives. And I think the songs they chose were of the era. They were universal without being, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, I use the common parlance, cringe. I
love them. I genuinely liked all of the... I don't know why people don't like that. I almost always do. And I've never figured out why people don't. Unless it's a bad... Like, I can understand not liking it if it's a bad pick, but, like, that doesn't seem like a reason to distrust the idea of, the song that... songs that we all know and like and understand the emotional context of, use those where appropriate.
Well, and
especially if you have all the money.
And it makes a soundtrack that people want to buy and makes everybody a lot of money. And these songs have been licensed so many times that it doesn't even cost that much, and et cetera, et cetera.
So, I don't understand why anyone would dislike the jukebox track to the degree that they would invent a term for it.
Oh, that's just I'm borrowing that term from a jukebox musical, which is instead of original compositions, in the vein of Chicago or Rent. They are singing real songs in the vein of Moulin Rouge.
Yeah, no, there are other terms that are used similar, like a needle drop and so on and so forth. I love those. I love those moments in movies. If they're done well, like, if they're done poorly, yeah, but that's true of any music.
Well, and that might be what's making people gun-shy, is these poorly done, and perhaps in their eyes, overplayed songs, which is often an issue. Or incongruous. I hearken back to that one Chip and Dale trailer when they were playing... It wasn't WAP, but it was something like, I don't think this should be in this movie.
It was WAP. Well, I mean, I think this movie was something that wasn't... It should have been in this movie, but I don't know that this was the movie it should have been.
I mean, I know a couple of websites you can go to if you're interested in that. But, it can make people gun shy. And I will say, a lot of people were worried about this being Illumination, the Minions company. To this film's credit, there's not a poop or fart joke. I don't even think there's a burp joke.
No, that's not the Mario brand.
It's not, and I appreciate Nintendo for that. So that's, like, there's not even a really big butt.
No?
Good integrity.
It's just not... They kept to the brand. This is a very professional animation studio. They might not make content I like all the time, but it's not because it's poorly made.
I will mention one thing that I didn't realize I didn't care for until it was pointed out to me after the fact. I saw it in the movie and was like, that was weird, but then I moved on with my life and forgot about it.
Right.
The slow motion segments were odd.
In what way?
They just sort of happened for some reason. I think there was like one or two that were actually done to like show off a character's face and like give you that moment of, he's about to land on that thing. Those were fine, but there were some other shots that were like faux epic, and a number of them in particular where we get Mario in slow motion saying Mamma Mia, which I don't know if that was supposed to be funny.
Yeah, it was like a running gag. It was like I think there were 3 times in the movie he did the same like move where he flipped over a thing, and we got a slow motion of him flipping over the thing saying Mamma Mia.
Yeah.
It was like it was his catchphrase. He was trying to make a catchphrase happen.
And I didn't notice it until the third one at like near the very end. And that's the point I went, what is this? Oh, no, it's over. I moved on with my life. Like I said, there was lots more stuff to enjoy after that.
Like, it wasn't... the joke didn't really land with me.
Sure.
But, like, that is... Ultimately, this is a kid's movie. That's a kid's movie joke.
Oh, yeah, and I could feel that. Like, there were a lot of moments in this film where I went, oh, man, if I was 8 right now...
This would rule.
Even 8-year-old me back then, I would be like, this would be my favorite movie. 30 years from now, I'd be talking about the remake of this movie on a podcast, or Braincast, or Brain Dance.
Yeah, there are some moments in this movie that don't land with me as jokes, but that's because I'm a grown ass man. That Mamma Mia thing, that's a kid's joke.
Sure, no,
like,
I agree.
He said it again. Oh, he said it a third time. That's funny.
Yeah, that's a thing.
I'm being introduced to what the concept of comedy is.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly the thing I would say when I was playing pretend in the backyard and pretending to slow motion backflip over something.
It would be Mamma Mia.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a Mamma Mia shirt.
Sure.
There's gonna be a Mamma Mia in 10 years when all the 8-year-olds are like 18. Who watch this movie, there's gonna be like a Mamma Mia ironic like social media trend. Trust me, it won't land. It isn't for us. It's a little ahead of the time, but your kids are gonna love it.
Thank you for bringing that home. I'm trying to remember if there were any other criticisms I heard that I thought were... someone pointed out that they didn't like that Mario gets the crap beat out of him through this whole film.
Okay, so there are 2 ways I can go about the next part of this conversation. I can engage with the surface of that complaint, or I can dig into that complaint to the underlying complaint. One of them is going to be meaner.
I feel like do the nicer one first. and then follow up with the second one.
Okay. So the surface of that complaint is you want your protagonist to be cool, and Mario's cool. We're here to watch Mario. Why does Mario keep getting beat up when all these other characters are doing cool or awesome things and he's like kind of schlubby? Well, that's because he's the protagonist of the movie. And there needs to be an arc of growth, and he doesn't have an emotional arc of growth because he's just kind of a nice, good dude who's trying to help the whole time. He doesn't have any emotional growth to go through, so you need to have some kind of conflict for him to confront. So it has to be physical. He has to suck and then get better, like Mulan, for instance, because he's not internally flawed and needs to overcome that despite already being good, like Lightning McQueen.
Lightning McQueen has the emotional arc, by
Yes,
contrast.
exactly. Lightning McQueen is already the top of his game. He's already the ace. I'm trying to keep it to kids' movies.
Sure.
So he's already the ace. So you need to give him a conflict so that it needs to be emotional. He has an emotional flaw. He has a personality flaw he overcomes. This is basic ass filmmaking. It's the first time I've cursed this whole podcast.
Have I cursed?
No.
Neat.
I've been trying. It's
Mamma Mia.
Mamma Mia. I've been trying for Mario. But this is very basic filmmaking. That is the surface of that complaint.
Okay.
The underlying layer of that complaint, and this is me going a little bit more
Uncharitable
and socially conscious than I try to be on the podcast. Because it's not really the vibe of the show. But this is only noticeable because by the time he's doing the adventure, he's pretty competent already. He gets beat up by Donkey Kong, but Donkey Kong is intended to be a severe, serious threat that he has to overcome. The only reason that this is a complaint that people do, it's not that thing I said before. It's because Peach is already good. And they don't like that.
I have heard some complaints that she didn't have anything to do or much of an arc. And I don't know that that's true. Now, they never did pay off that whole am I from Earth thing. Maybe in a future movie. It doesn't need to be paid off here. But she is the one who actually cares about, saving the Mushroom Kingdom. I mean...
Now, that is kind of a valid complaint in that Peach does not really have an arc.
Not really, no.
She's kind of a flat character. She experiences no challenge, no growth. She's pretty good. She's never really in much personal peril. And she's, she kind of always overcomes the challenges in front of her as a secondary character. She doesn't overcome any of the big challenges of the movie because she's not the protagonist. So she doesn't necessarily need that. She's also not a Mario brother. So she doesn't really need as much of an arc. Her name isn't on the Mamma Mia marquee.
Away from social commentary, I have always been frustrated by people who feel like every character, every primary, secondary, or tertiary character in a piece of fiction need to have some sort of arc or growth. I don't think that's true. I think a character, even a primary character, can be pretty flat while still having an interesting story happen around them.
I feel like there needs to be an arc.
I feel like someone needs to.
Whether it is the protagonist has it, or it's a group, or it's some sort of political arc. There needs to be something that changes over the course of the story.
Yes.
Otherwise, why are we here? It's
not a story; it's a textbook.
Why are we here? Why are we here?
You're reading a Lord of the Rings supplementary piece of material.
But I am being incredibly uncharitable, but I'm pretty sure the only reason people complain about that is because Peach is already good, and there is a whole scene where she watches Mario fail and then kind of clowns on him for failing as like a joke, and that hurts some guys' feelings. That's a little bit more. It's a little meaner than I intend to be on the podcast, but
Well, let me take that concept and maybe neuter it a bit. It could also be somebody who, let's say, they grew up with Mario, and Mario's their hero, and seeing their hero suck hurts their feelings.
and you know what? That's kind of valid.
Yeah.
But like, he's got to suck it first, so that moment at the end of the movie when he rules feels good.
Well, and it speaks to what you're talking about, what you were talking about with Peach. Peach is static because she's already part of this world. Mario is our avatar.
He's our audience surrogate. He's coming into this world. So in order for all of the Mushroom Kingdom stuff to look dangerous and challenging, it must put him in peril.
Yes. And he can't be automatically good at everything because he doesn't have emotional growth. He doesn't change in that way.
And also, a protagonist who is immediately great at everything they try, unless you have some other thing going on with them, is boring. I promise you. Like, it feels cool for like 10 minutes, and then unless it's a joke, unless it's the movie Crank, and that's the joke, it doesn't really work all that well.
Thank you for shining a ray of Skywalker sunlight on that point. I appreciate.
I do my best.
Thank you. That was Super Mario Brothers movie. Is there anything else you wanted to say about it? I'd like to end on a positive note, but I want to make sure you have a platform. You are half of this podcast.
I don't really have much. I liked this movie a lot. It was really fun. It's not going to be my favorite movie of all time. There's not enough weight there. At this point in my life, if you don't make me cry at least once, you don't get in the top 10.
I got a little emotionally touched.
But it was the same, but it was
just a little emotionally touched.
It was a little. But I go see this. Like,
Yeah.
it's fun.
I think the
And
highest...
it's cool and bright and shiny enough that seeing it in the theater actually would be cool.
I mean, that's the biggest selling point of it. If this was not a Super Mario Brothers movie, if this followed all the same tropes with serial numbers scrubbed off and no references to anything, it would be a quarter of the movie that it is. But because they took the time to put Glass Joe on the wall...
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The fact that they clearly... If the people who made this movie don't love Mario, they at the very least do a really good job of pretending to.
The biggest emotional moment for me was obviously at the climax of the film. I won't spoil exactly what happens. It's not necessary. It's the climax of the film. It's what you'd expect to be the biggest emotional moment. The second was the first few bars of the Super Nintendo Rainbow Road music.
They got you, man. They got you.
And they did it right. It is a safe-ass movie, and you can tell by the money, and that's okay.